do we mean when we talk about the past? The past. It can mean a very, very long time ago. They tell us 13 plus billion years ago, time began with the Big Bang. It's a long time. I can't get that in my head. Or it can mean a split second ago, right? Or it can mean everything in between those two events, or some part of it. But why do we care? Is the past important? To what? I heard an of course. Why, Kate? It's part of who we are and who we might become. Thank you, Kate. So the ghost of Christmas past comes to Scrooge at midnight on Christmas Eve to take him on a journey to the past, his past. But before the journey can begin, there's something that needs to happen. And thank you, Julia. The ghost tells him, "Bear but a touch of my hand there." Where? There, laying it upon his heart. Why his heart? A journey to the past, because that's where they live. Our memories. Our memories live here, don't they? Our memories hold the past for us, and they are, I think, even more alive in our heart of hearts than they are somewhere in the synapses of our brains, right? And so the Spirit must touch his heart before he can begin his journey. So let me invite you, put your hand on your own heart. Do you feel that? All that's in there. For some of us, even this little gesture is too vulnerable. Sometimes we're afraid of what's in there, or even what may not be. What may not be. Our clearest memories, we're told by research, are not triggered by sights or sounds or even touch, but by what? Smells. Smells trigger the clearest memories we can have. That right there, friends, is a Victorian goose pie. Not sure I want to have one, but it's gorgeous. What are some of the smells of Christmas past for you that trigger wonderful memories? What spices? I was going to say your latte. Cinnamon in particular. Yeah. What else? Cloves. Peppermint. Good. Anise. Sage. Pine. Yes. We could go on. For me, it's tamales and chocolate simmering on the stove, and whoosh, I'm back in Grandma's kitchen, 1962. Boom, just like that. It's amazing how strong our memories can be, isn't it? They hold power. And they even hold more power when they're shared. Our collective memory has great power. Jesus said, "Do this in remembrance of me." And when we share that simple act of eating mere bread and juice together, suddenly we are made one people across 2 millennia of souls. The power of remembrance, of memory. Well, sometimes our memories deceive us, don't they? They can be incomplete. They can be subjective. They can be misleading. Sometimes they're just wrong. You remember the Christmas story, right? I hope you remember a little better than the children. So how many wise men came to the manger? Careful, careful, careful. Okay, you're going to have to talk to one another because 3 is not the right answer. When the bell chimed on Christmas Eve, Mr. Scrooge was a mean, selfish, miserly, a Scrooge of a man, right, who despised Christmas and the joy that others found in it. But he wasn't always that way. There were gaps in his memory. He forgot who he had been. And so the ghost of Christmas past comes to him as a bright, shining, brilliant, glaring light. Why would Dickens pick a light for the first ghost of Christmas past? Why a light? Yes. The light shines on the past and reveals things, right? The light is something Scrooge is afraid of because he has worked so hard to bury some of those memories deep in his heart. And at one point, Scrooge in the story actually takes the snuffer, the candle snuffer, and he tries really hard to snuff out the light of the ghost of Christmas past, and the light just spills out from the bottom everywhere. And you remember the text. The darkness cannot put it out. If there's to be any hope for Mr. Scrooge, he has to go back and own his past. Anyone who's ever done any serious therapy, Marion, knows that you get absolutely nowhere unless you're willing to go through the muck of your own past, right? There's no growth. There's no hope without going back to that past. Mr. Scrooge, little Ebenezer, young Ebenezer, has Christmas memories of great joy, but also of deep sorrow, deep pain. And so do we. How many of you have at least one Christmas that brings you sadness? One painful Christmas in your lifetime? Your worship committee and I explored hosting something that's called a Blue Christmas. A Blue Christmas is a special worship service of healing, particularly for those who find the holidays painful and lonely. There's a lot of people who share that pain. Maybe next year we might try that. In 2011, on Christmas night, in the wee hours, I got a phone call that my auntie, my second mother, had passed away. And I had been with her before my worship services, and then I got the call in the wee hours, and I drove to her house, and my cousins, her 2 daughters, and I prayed over her, and I read for all of us Simeon's song. It's a prayer. Simeon, who held in his arms the 8-day-old baby Jesus and sang this song. Now let your servant die in peace, for I have seen your salvation with my own eyes. And that act redeemed the sadness, the pain of that Christmas night for me. It's not a terribly sad memory. It's one where I have great joy for the life and the faith that my auntie gave me. And that reading brought to me the true meaning of Christmas, even on a very sad night. Emmanuel, God with us. God with us. John Wesley's words on his deathbed, God with us. Jesus saves us with a body that is broken. He's not a superhero. He offers us his body. Do this in remembrance of me. This is broken for you. I believe that there are redemptive possibilities in every painful memory that we have. And the spirit of Christmas past wishes Scrooge back to his hometown, where he's suddenly overwhelmed with everything that he sees, and he is conscious of 1,000 odors floating in the air. Maybe it's cinnamon and spices, and maybe it's puddings, figgy pudding, who knows? And he also knows that each one is connected with 1,000 thoughts and hopes and joys and cares long forgotten. He's back in touch with his former self. And Scrooge is moved. The ghost says, "Your lip is trembling. And what is that upon your cheek?" A single tear finds its way to his cheek. And that, brothers and sisters, is the sign, the first sign that there is hope for Mr. Scrooge. That his heart has been touched and moved by the joy he once knew and the friends that he can no longer, and the grief of the friends that he can no longer share that joy with, who are long gone from his life. And another sign follows shortly after that, when Scrooge is reminded what a painful childhood he had with a family that did not want him and left him alone at Christmas when all the other boys would go home. And again, Scrooge becomes emotional, and the ghost asks him, "What's the matter?" as he sees his lip trembling. And Scrooge says, "Nothing." But there was something. He says, "There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night." Do you remember what happened? You shoot him off. "I should like to have given him," forgive the Victorian language, "I should like to have given him something. That's all." But that's everything, isn't it? Everything, because his heart is grieving a loss in that moment. He's remembering back to the little boy. And Scrooge does not say, "Bah humbug," nor does he rail against the poor. He doesn't push away the advent of empathy that's growing in his heart. He confesses his pain, and he receives it. And he remembers that he missed an opportunity to make someone else's life a little sweeter. That's hope for Mr. Scrooge. That's the sign of God at work in his heart, and that's the sign that he is on a path to his redemption. That's where it is. That's where the path begins. In our heart of hearts that holds all of our memories, 1,000 thoughts and hopes and joys and cares long forgotten. So cherish your memories of Christmas past. Because if you manage to shed a tear, whether in joy or in sorrow, it's the beginning. It's a sign of hope for us. Amen.